Welcome back. It is Monday here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, high atop the 18th fairway, and it is beautiful out there. Going to be beautiful all day. Can't wait. Got Dust in the wind right now with Dustin Schutte, always with us, of course, from Outsider.com, sitting in as a co-host as always, and Dustin Dopirak from the Bloomington Herald-Times. I know you didn't write this piece. It was Zach talking about Mike Woodson using the NBA style of coaching. There was a lot of talk last year of, the two units. And even this year, some of the teammates have said, there's two starting units. Well, I don't believe that, personally. First of all, I know there might be two units, but there are not two units that are just as good as each other. That is a fact. Now, whether they may be able to bring in a whole new unit, yeah, they can. Don't know what the fall off is going to be. I don't think it would be like it would have been last year if they do that. But it's going to be interesting to see. Don Fisher was on with us earlier. One of the guys he said was impressive, of course, Malik Renaud, very special. Trey Galloway shooting the ball well. So Miller Kopp shooting the ball really, really well. Miller Kopp shot the ball really well at Hoosier Hysteria, Dustin, and he just looks more relaxed to me now. And I compared him to Pat Graham. He just got that very fluid motion, and we'll see if that transfers to the court. But I think that whatever pressure or whatever it was that got to him last year, he seems to have gotten past that.
Yeah, I'm interested in as terms of how dynamics are going to be different. I mean, obviously he was a first-year guy, and they needed somebody to hit threes. I don't know if it made a difference that there were two spot up, don't really do anything else but shoot threes guys, that couldn't create between the two of them. And Stewart and Kopp starting together. I mean, did that ultimately, lead each of them to be better defended, or just ultimately lead to more stagnancy when it's just you had Xavier Johnson trying to create everything, like obviously centers of gravity in the middle in Jackson Davis and Thompson. And then, these two guys just sort of sitting out on the perimeter, hoping that something was going to come. And it took, I think, Johnson a while to really know how to play with them or to really even like throw back on a pick and roll, basically like be able to kind of know where something is behind him and know when to not even pull back, but decide that he's going to kick it. Even if he's sort of past the level that those two guys are at. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what held them back, but obviously, like you said, you got to wait to see in games. I mean, I imagine Miller Kopp looked perfectly fine shooting the basketball last year. We didn't see a ton of it. We didn't. I don't know if we saw anything prior to games last year. Obviously, because we're still dealing with enough of COVID that not a lot was open. I'm trying to think. I don't think I went to Hoosiers area. I think there was football reasons for that. I think there was football that night or that weekend at least. I think IU was at Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. We didn't get as much even to process about how he was shooting the basketball. But he does seem more confident. But again, I'll just be interested to see what that looks like. Now he's going to have more creators on the floor no matter what you do with them. I think if you've got Johnson and Hood-Schifino together, those guys obviously can both create off the bounce. I think Tamar Bates is going to be a lot more confident in those scenarios. They're obviously getting him some work playing point guard. If they're going to do a second unit, it seems like if they're going to do a second unit and Hood-Schifino is not going to lead the second unit, it seems like Tamar Bates is going to lead the second unit, which is interesting because obviously he was sort of recruited, operated wholly as a two last year, but he's getting a lot of one work and we'll see how that goes. Galloway can obviously handle the one if necessary. It's not his best, best place, but he could do it. So you're going to have a lot of guys that can make plays off the bounce. And you've got more guys who can shoot off the bounce this year than you did last year. But, Kopp becomes sort of the one guy that is a true catch and shoot guy that's not going to require the ball in his hand very much. And I guess Anthony Leal too, if he gets some minutes, but, Kopp, that could work for Kopp basically. If there's less of a situation where like Stewart and Kopp, it's got to be one of you two guys. You guys got to hit threes because there's nobody else who can do it. Where it's sort of more of a scenario where everybody can shoot, but Stewart Kopp is the guy that can truly get himself lost.
Caleb Nost, contributor to the Hoosier.com, says, don't be surprised to see Caleb Banks play considerable minutes. Well, I won't be because I have not gotten to see him, so I don't know what's going on there. But, hey, man, if these guys, they just seem much more talented, deeper in a deeper sense this year. Where last year everybody thought that they were deep, and they truly weren't. It's not that all the top pieces weren't talented; they just did not seem to fit at all the times. And I think that there is a much better fit, much deeper with the guys this year. I think you can run different guys in there together.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd run different guys in there together last year, but there were just ultimately pieces missing. There were guys that there just was not enough shooting. I think your second unit had all guys that could do something. If you had Finney could do something, and Galloway certainly was valuable, and Jordan Geronimo obviously still is in a position where I don't think he's going to get the minutes that he deserves. Whatever they do with him, whether he gets more minutes at the 3, at the 4, whatever. I think it's still going to be a situation where you're still not going to see everything you can see from Jordan Geronimo this year. Because there's just too many guys that play his position that they still have, especially Race. But there's like a big piece is development. You didn't see the Tamar Bates that you could see last year, and the extent to which I think we've seen good things in what we've been allowed to see so far in Hoosier Hysteria and the Hoosier Hysterics event. So between the time we've got to see Tamar Bates on the court, I think you see a different guy. I mean, obviously it's a small sample size, but you just seem to be able to tell the difference. But that's a big deal when Bates is a guy that's a 1-2 combo, 1-2-3 combo. The could play any of the 3 guard positions that you want. If he can score the basketball, going to the rim and shooting, that's just a different guy. I mean, he hits such a cold spot, and when he wasn't effective, because I thought he was on the way to being a starter in November and early December, and he just hit a stretch where he just couldn't put the ball in the ocean, and from that point forward, a second unit just didn't really have a lot of value. I mean, Galloway obviously gives you a lot of Galloway and Finney gave you a lot of defense, but no scoring in between them. And when Bates couldn't score, you got 3 perimeter guys out there that weren't really getting you buckets. Galloway can go finish at the rim and he can drive and kick and stuff like that, but when you don't have a shooter around him and he's not shooting, he's only so effective offensively, and Finney can do some things for you, but only so much. That second unit, once Bates fell off, just really didn't have the scoring punch that you need to put together a second unit. This group, again, if Bates can score, then you've got options. Then you've got guys you can piece together, and you've got a lot more real depth. And so, Caleb Banks obviously is better than anything you had at 11 or 12 last year. And, Banks is very interesting to me. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a piece of it this year, but I also wouldn't be surprised if you only see 5 minutes a game from him this year. But 2-3 years from now, he's an All Big Ten player. I can totally see that too, that you don't see that much of him this year, but you eventually see a lot of development, and he really becomes a big time guy once some of those other guards cycle out.
What's going to be interesting to me, Dustin, is how they utilize this depth, because just because you have 12 or 13 guys that can go in and play and make a difference doesn't mean you necessarily want to play that many guys. Right. Because you have to get guys into a rhythm. You can't just have somebody go out there for 2 or 3 minutes and expect them to play to their full potential. So it's going to be really interesting to me early in the season, these exhibition games, and then the first couple games before they play Xavier, to see what kind of the rotations look like, because I feel like it's always a double-edged sword with fans, right? If you don't have enough depth, you're not recruiting well enough. You don't have enough talent on the roster. If you've got too much depth, everybody wants to see, well, why aren't players X, Y, and Z seeing more court time? It just doesn't work that way. So that to me is probably. I do agree. It's better to have depth than to not have it, obviously, because of injuries, because of different styles of play, and it's a long, grueling Big Ten season. But very interesting to me to see from the mentality standpoint, and then just see what these rotations are. How many guys does Woody feel comfortable sending out into the floor in a specific game? Because you might have 12, 13 guys, but you may only see 9 or 10. That to me is not a high talking point this offseason, but it's going to be something that I'm looking forward to in these first couple games.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's part of the reason, Zach wrote the piece today on a second unit. And That is a big question for me. If Woodson is still married to that idea, and because obviously it's an NBA idea, is playing a second unit because you play 82 games. You got to utilize your depth. I mean, you can't ask those guys to go out and play 48 every night. Like, that's absurd. Whereas college, obviously, you have it's 20-year-old bodies and they're playing 32 games. Like, you can ask a lot more of them per night than you do in the NBA, where you really have to have something separate, and it makes a lot of sense then to do it in shifts. Basically to have periods where you have 5 different guys out there. Just cycle them in like hockey, or even if you're going to float, into a second unit, but basically to have a second team of 5. And Woodson seemed pretty married to the idea of getting to a second team of 5 last year. Maybe he didn't always go to the 5th and always put Michael Dora out there, but for a while he really did. So the question is if he's going to try to do that again, or if it's going to be more fluid. And I think he can go either way. I think you can have, scenarios where it's like, okay, you've got Johnson, Hood, Schifino, and, maybe Bates, or maybe Kopp, or maybe Galloway or whatever at the 3. Where you can play those 2 together, and really any of the other wings can slide in there depending on matchups. Maybe you want to go bigger and put Geronimo, or you can have a scenario where Hood-Schifino is the point and you have Bates at the 2, and again you have any of those other wings at the 3, and it can depend on how much shooting do you need, how much size do you need, to match up with whatever you've got. If you really want to do second unit, it locks you in a little bit. In terms of how fluid you want to be with matchups. So I'm interested to see if Woodson is still married to the idea, if he likes the platoon or doesn't. If this changes his mind, or if he really feels like this is the direction I want to go. And Justin Beard here asked the question, what will Geronimo play? Will he come in at 3 at the 4? So that kind of plays into this whole scenario, is that Geronimo is getting minutes at the 3 and the 4. In practice, at least he was the last time we talked to him as of September. The goal was to get him some perimeter skills so he could be more versatile and get more minutes and not just get buried behind Race Thompson.
And Indiana is a lot bigger this year, Dustin. I mean, think about the size. I mean, you've got Caleb Banks, Malik Rayno, Race, Trace, Logan Duncombe, who their teammates are saying is there. So that's just the size. That's your bigs. That's before you get to Jordan Geronimo and Tamar Bates and Miller Kopp, who at 6'6" are playing hopefully a little bit bigger than that. So Indiana is bigger, more athletic this year without question, all the way around.
Xavier Johnson's
their guards are bigger.
Yeah, Xavier Johnson's the smallest scholarship guy on the team, right? 6'3".
Yeah, I mean it's even the guards have gotten bigger.
Yeah, no, I mean CJ Gunn is skinny still, even though he's put some muscle on. But I mean he's 6'5", and got length and has wingspan. So but yeah, going to that point, you have all these big guards and these big wings, so you can play, you can play a lot of guys that are nominally 2s at the 3. But you can also play, again, Jordan Geronimo, a nominal 4 at the 3. You can play Caleb Banks, who can be 3-4. And also, Rayno, you can play 4-5. And so it's okay, when you have all those guys that have at least a second position, and you can play around with combinations. So locking them in that, all right, Tamar Bates is your second team 1, and Galloway is your second team 2, and Geronimo is your second team 3, Rayno is your second team 4, and Duncombe's your second team 5. You're locking those guys in a little bit, I think. And it almost makes a lot more sense to have it more fluid and say, okay, you could play, you can play Jackson Davis and Rayno together. I mean, and Jackson Davis claims you can play him and Duncombe together. I guess you could do that. I don't know if that's, high on my list of greatest front court combinations that this team needs to have. But, you can play Thompson and Rayno together. You can play Thompson and Geronimo together. I think against certain groups, maybe against. Yeah,
Caleb pointing out that Jordan Geronimo's role will be based on his ball handling improvement until he sees that come along fluidly. Has him slotted at the floor 4, and I agree with that. I mean, if he had the ability to create his own shot, my God, he would be a dangerous dangerous player. He's not a dangerous player now. He's a player that you can get good things from, especially on the defensive end.
I would say
he's not what I would call dangerous.
The one place I would push back on though is that, I mean, like that's what he was at the end of March. So, you know, like, and like you ask him, like he has put a lot of work into it. And the question is, how far has he come? And I don't think we've seen enough to know yet how far Geronimo has come as a ball handler. Because that was my thing, is like everyone's like, well, he like have Geronimo play the 3. I'm like, yeah, sure, snap your fingers. The guy just turns the ball over. You know, he's got like 7 assists to 31 turnovers. Like, all right, like we're talking a drastic improvement that he's got to make. Well, I don't know. I mean, he did work on it, so I think we still need to see how far did Geronimo come as far as ball handling is concerned. I don't think we saw enough in the limited amount of scrimmaging we saw to see if he's any better or not. I really don't know. You know, but I think if he can really handle the basketball and you can play him real 3 minutes, that makes a difference. Even if he can just attack a closeout, you know, just cross over and just go run and dunk on somebody, you know, that matters. But to be able to handle when they're getting somebody who's got a decent perimeter defender on him and just not give the ball up, I think it's really important.
Justin, you don't have to be anxious much longer, because the exhibitions will commence in 1 week. No, this Saturday, rather. This Saturday at 3 p.m. I can't think of a better time to have put that game, Dustin, than during Indiana's bye weekend of not having a game. Let's put that right in the middle of the weekend.
Yeah.
Let's don't give the guys a weekend off. Don't do that.
No,
can't have that.
No, it's the only way they're getting money for those exhibition tickets.